I'm pleased to have the chance to talk with Nancy Dunn, who is a seasoned B2B marketer who has spent time consulting and working across lots of different industries, including IBM and many other B2B companies. And we share a common interest and focus on customer strategy. And so delighted to be with you here today. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you for having me, Jessica. It's great to be here.
I'd like to start by asking you your perspective on what marketing and customer leaders need to be thinking about today to support growth for their organizations.
Well, that's a really good question. I think it really centers upon the topic of customer generally, and it really comes down to customer experience. So, customer experience to me really aligns the brand to the lifetime value of the customer and the ultimate growth of the business. Because those things, when they're unified and the customer has great experiences at every touch point throughout their journey, it only reflects well on the brand and helps drive demand long term and renewals. And those things are really integral to how you should be thinking about your growth strategy, because the opposite can happen when somebody has a bad experience, right? They will ultimately, share the negativity of their experience with other possible customers, and it will reflect badly on the brand itself. And today we have so many different access points as customers, can share their reviews and their thoughts online. So it's really about thinking about the total journey and how customers interact with your company, your brand, your salespeople, everything, so that the experience is unified and positive.
You've had the benefit of working across lots of different categories and sectors. What would you say is different about B2B when it comes to customer focus and what matters for growth?
So I think with B2B, what's special about B2B is that companies really know their customers well, right? Much more so than they do in consumer brands. They know who their customers are, they know what the problems are, and they can be very strategic in terms of how they engage with their customers to help solve their problems. And when they do that well, they are thinking holistically about the customers, and they can really adjust to each customer's, unique problems with solutions that really work for them. So I think that's what's really unique about B2B is that, they really understand the customers well, their customer problems and the mindsets that the customers have in terms of addressing these problems.
What are your thoughts on why customer focus really should matter and be at the top of the agenda for both strategy leaders and CEOs today?
Because I think it's really about creating a North Star for the organization, right? Because you really, as an organization, if you think about putting the customer at the center, you really learn what good looks like, right? So you know what matters to customers and how the organization should be operating around customers and for customers. And I think that really helps simplify a lot of issues that, bubble up throughout, organizations in terms of how they think about growth and just addressing problems. And also strategically, when you have the customer at the center and it becomes a North Star, how you think about growing through adjacent markets and new product offerings becomes, I think, a little bit simpler. You know what your customer needs are. And so you can be smart about that and be thoughtful and eliminate a lot of the unnecessary things that sometimes bubble up around strategy. You can be really thoughtful about how you want to go to market and how you want to expand.
And have you seen benefits for core businesses as well by keeping this customer focus front and center?
The customer focus can benefit the core business by having every touch point that the customer experiences with the business be positive. And that means everything from sales and marketing to product to delivery to even the back office in terms of how the customers experience the company. When you invoice a customer and the customer, has a positive experience, they know what their, net payment days are and they know how to do it well, or, you make it easy for them to pay you or address or, any invoicing problems. It's all very positive, and the core business will ultimately benefit because the customers are having, very positive experiences.
And what do you see as the biggest barriers or challenges to delivering on a customer growth strategy in organizations today? What gets in the way? What are the biggest hurdles? And how should we think about addressing them?
Think the biggest challenge is obviously the organization itself and the operating model design. So, are you, creating an organization that has the right processes in place and and the handoffs and the touch points internally to serve the customer appropriately? And that really has to come from leadership. Leadership really has to stand up and constantly reinforce it throughout the organization so that the organization is operating appropriately and, is performing the right cadences and doing the handoffs well in terms of, serving their customers. It's a really big challenge, I think, in every company, big companies particularly, because leaders sort of think, I'll say it once and everybody will understand it, but you really have to reinforce it constantly. By the time you're sick of saying it, the organization is just starting to get it. And so you really want to reinforce the behaviors, you want to reinforce the thinking. And, if you set up the organization with the right operating model design and reinforce the importance of customers and the behaviors you want to see, ultimately it will, take root and start to, unfold properly within the company.
You're so right about that operating model design and the reinforcement and power of consistency and taking the time to do
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that's great. Anything else that we didn't cover that you'd want to add around this topic of customer and growth and what's important for strategy and strategy leaders and CEOs?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important thing is really, again, reinforcing it, but really making sure that, the organization understands that every behavior and touch point with customers is ultimately reinforcing on the brand. It's contributing to the ultimate brand growth and the halo effect that the brand will have in the marketplace. And there are plenty of companies that everybody knows and talks about that, people immediately understand as great brands, and they're great brands because they serve their customers well. And it doesn't have to be a consumer brand, it can be a B2B brand. And people always know that they will get great service and have a great experience. So when the company and the organization is really, operating at, their top speed, they really should be thinking about how their activities and their touch points with the customer will ultimately help grow the brand and reinforce it in the marketplace.